Okay, let's do this. Close your eyes for a second. Just picture this with me. The sun is just catching the water in Venice, that amazing light on the canals. It's timeless, beautiful, and the date is specific. June 27th, 2025. There's this buzz in the air. It's different from the usual tourist crowds. It's like sophisticated. We're talking about the wedding of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez. An event so exclusive, so dazzling, it just seemed to stop everything else for a moment. Now, okay, on the surface, yeah, it sounds like your classic celebrity fairy tale. But when we started peeling back the layers for this deep dive, what we found was, well, it wasn't just glamour and unbelievable wealth. There was some surprisingly powerful social commentary wrapped up in it all.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating to unpack. It wasn't just another lavish party. It really became this flashpoint, didn't it? For these huge conversations we're all having about, wealth, inequality, what's happening to cities like Venice with over-tourism, and even like how private giving fits in when there's such public extravagance. Right. So our mission today is really to pull out those key insights. We want you to understand not just what went down, but why it kind of resonated, why it mattered beyond the celebrity pages.
Right. Let's get into it. So this fairy tale on water, the sheer spectacle was, well, it was something else. The setting alone, San Giorgio Island. You've got the Church of San Giorgio Maggiore right there. It's just breathtaking. You can almost feel the history, the grandeur.
That's truly iconic. The perfect backdrop, really.
And then Lauren Sánchez. I mean, the dress, custom Dolce & Gabbana, mermaid line, apparently inspired by Sophia Loren in that old movie, Houseboat. But get this. It reportedly took 900 hours to create.
900 hours? That's almost unbelievable. Like nearly 38 full days of work round the clock.
Exactly. It just speaks volumes about the level of bespoke detail involved. She had the traditional veil, too, tulle and lace. And Bezos, classic black tux, very sharp.
It definitely signals that shift we're seeing, beyond just luxury, towards what you might call experiential extremism.
Experiential extremism? How do you mean?
Well, it's not just about having nice things anymore for this level of wealth. It's about crafting an experience that's almost impossible to replicate. Totally unique, incredibly personal, intensely curated. The event itself becomes like a performance piece, a statement. And yeah, that comes with a price tag to match.
Okay, yeah, I see that. And speaking of performance, the moment they exchanged vows under this huge floral canopy with that Venetian skyline, it really did look like something out of a Disney movie. Sánchez even posted a photo on Instagram, beaming, guests clapping. Pure joy, but definitely framed by serious opulence.
A very specific kind of fairy tale.
So who was there to witness this fairy tale? The guest list. I mean, it was basically a Hollywood invasion.
Right. A proper who's who of global elites just descended on Venice.
Think about it. Oprah Winfrey, Kim Kardashian, Bill Gates was there, Leonardo DiCaprio, Ivanka Trump, Tom Brady, even Queen Rania of Jordan.
Wow.
Around 200 guests, they estimated. It's kind of amazing anyone was left in LA that weekend.
Seriously.
And their arrival itself was part of the spectacle, right? Private jets touching down at Treviso and Venice Marco Polo airports, super yachts gliding through the lagoon.
It really reinforces that idea of a sort of temporary takeover, a private world superimposed onto this very public, historic city.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a little detail that caught my eye, the invitation. Apparently, it was this striking electric blue and highlighter pink design.
Okay.
And it reportedly asked for no gifts. Instead, they suggested guests donate to several Venetian charities and organizations.
That's interesting. An interesting contrast given everything else.
Right. So from the glamour and the guests, let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets, well, pretty staggering.
Yeah, the cost is definitely a major part of the story.
The estimate for the whole 3-day celebration is somewhere between $7 and $10 million.
7 to 10 million.
Yeah. Now put that in perspective. The average wedding cost in the U.S. for 2025 around $36,000. So this wedding was roughly 278 times more expensive than average.
Wow. That's hard to even wrap your head around.
With that kind of money, you could fund some serious charitable work or, I don't know, buy a small island maybe. It just highlights this vast difference in scale.
Absolutely. And it begs the question, why Venice specifically? I mean, obviously it's beautiful, but why did that location drive the costs up quite so dramatically?
Good question.
Well, it really comes down to logistics. Venice is built on water. There are no roads in the historic center. So think about every single thing from those huge floral displays we mentioned, the catering equipment, the food, the sound systems, even Lauren Sánchez's incredibly detailed gown. It all had to be transported by boat. That's incredibly complex and time-consuming. Reports suggest it basically tripled the logistical costs compared to doing it in, say, Rome or Florence.
Wow, tripled. Okay, that makes sense. It adds this whole other layer of difficulty and cost, obviously.
Definitely.
And speaking of logistics and locations, there was that interesting shift with the reception venue, too.
Ah, yes, the move.
Initially, it was planned for the Scuola Grande della Misericordia, that stunning 16th century building, huge, majestic.
Right.
But then they moved it to the Arsenal, the old historic shipyard. Still amazing, but much more secluded, surrounded by these old fortified walls.
And the reason.
Protest threats, specifically because of planned protests against the event.
Which brings us neatly to that whole other side of the coin, the resistance.
Exactly. While all this glamour and wealth was unfolding, there was this local group, No Space for Bezos, organizing, and they were pretty vocal.
They certainly made their presence felt.
Their main point was basically twofold. This kind of extreme display highlights growing inequality, and it shines a harsh light on the damage over-tourism is doing to Venice.
Yeah, hitting on those really sensitive points for the city.
And they took action. We saw banners, didn't we? Things like, no space for Bezos, and if you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax. Pretty direct.
Very direct. And Greenpeace got involved, too.
Oh, yeah. They unfurled that big banner right in St. Mark's Square. Bezos, pay your taxes. You couldn't miss it.
And didn't they float something down the Grand Canal?
They did. A mannequin made to look like Bezos. It was quite surreal, floating past the palazzos. Sort of darkly humorous, maybe? A very visual protest?
Definitely memorable. A way to create their own spectacle, to counter the wedding spectacle.
And apparently there was even a threat, maybe more symbolic than anything, to block the canals with inflatable crocodiles to stop guests getting through. They called it a splashy protest.
Huh. Okay, that's creative. Now, the authorities kind of downplayed these protests, didn't they? Pointing to the money the event brought in.
Yeah, they focused on the economic benefits, the prestige.
But the tension was obviously there. You couldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
And it really highlights this paradox of luxury tourism.
All right.
Well, these big, high-spending events, they bring in cash, sure, short-term boost. But they can also worsen the long-term problems, pushing out locals because of rising costs, straining resources, making residents feel like their public spaces are being rented out to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm. That feeling of the city being privatized.
Exactly. So it creates this fundamental tension. When does a private celebration start to undermine the public good, the very soul of a place like Venice?
That's a really critical point. But it's also important to remember Jeff Bezos isn't just about spending lavishly. There is a significant philanthropic side, too.
Right, the giving pledge.
Yeah, back in 2022, he announced he plans to give away most of his fortune, which was, what, $234 billion at the time? A truly massive commitment.
It's a staggering amount of money, no question.
And connecting it right back to Venice, his Earth Fund actually supports Carilla. That's a research institute in Venice working on the lagoon's ecosystem, climate change impacts.
So a direct local connection through his philanthropy.
Exactly. There's that dimension, too.
And this adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it? Because the debate then becomes, okay, you have this huge philanthropic effort, which is clearly doing good work, but how does that sit alongside the, $10 million wedding? Does one balance out the other?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, or maybe the $10 million question here.
For some people, private charity, no matter how generous, can't really offset the kind of systemic inequalities that such extreme wealth displays tend to highlight, especially if those inequalities are linked to the problems that charity is trying to fix. It becomes a discussion about private solutions for what might be seen as public problems. It's rarely simple.
Definitely not simple. And all this really brings us back to Venice itself. It felt like a tale of two cities coexisting uneasily within the same canals.
Divided is a good word for it.
Yeah, the wedding definitely split opinions. Venice has its own history of incredible wealth and display, of course, but it's also a city grappling very publicly with over-tourism, with climate change threatening its very existence.
A fragile beauty.
So you had this visible split. City officials largely welcoming the money, the prestige, the global spotlight.
But there's a side of things.
Right. But then you had so many locals feeling like this event just perfectly encapsulated the city's deeper problems, the crowding, the cost of living, the feeling of being overwhelmed.
It becomes a symbol.
Totally. Imagine the scene. You've got private jets overhead. Down below, caterers are making these exquisite Venetian pastries. You've got security, even bum-sniffing dogs on San Giorgio. And at the same time, somewhere else in the city, protesters are planning how to float a Bezos mannequin down the Grand Canal. It's just a clash of
A
worlds.
stark contrast, yeah. The hyper-elite bubble floating through this ancient, complex, and currently quite stressed city.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, what's the takeaway? I mean, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's wedding was, without a doubt, this incredibly grand affair. It captured the world's attention. It was a huge celebration of love, luxury against this unbelievably romantic backdrop. You can't deny the spectacle.
No, absolutely not. The sheer scale was memorable.
But, as we've explored, it was also impossible to ignore how it became this potent symbol. A reminder of the massive disparities in our world today and that constant friction between global wealth and local life. It had romance, riches, and resistance all in one package.
And I think what's really striking is how these incredibly public displays of wealth still have this power to ignite crucial conversations. They force us to talk about things that maybe we don't always confront head on. We end up discussing economics, environmental footprints, what we owe to heritage sites, social responsibility. The ripples go far beyond the event itself. It prompts us maybe to think a bit more critically about the systems we live in, the choices being made.
Right, which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to chew on. When we see something this grand, this beautiful, this undeniably impressive, what's our role as a society? Do we have a responsibility to question these displays, especially when they touch on sensitive issues like inequality or the future of fragile places like Venice? And what lessons can we actually learn from the very specific, very Venetian way this whole story unfolded? Something to think about.